Today we've got Chris Carman, Managing Director of Carman Associates and Quick Visas. So Chris has got a wealth of knowledge and experience assisting both large and smaller companies to implement strategies to meet skills needs and also comply with immigration law. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
First question being, can Australian businesses actually employ workers from overseas?
Absolutely. There's programs that Australian businesses can employ people through. I think probably the number one thing is you've always got to check the work rights of an individual.
Yeah.
So as an employer, once you have your short list of candidates, it's probably prudent to ask them, can I see your passport? If it's an Australian passport, obviously they have full work rights. If the person doesn't have a passport, which is actually pretty common, believe it or not, then you would request a birth certificate to demonstrate they were born in Australia. I do think that if HR departments or businesses aren't actually requesting to see someone's passport, then they're kind of doing themselves a little bit of a disservice. The Department of Immigration, the Australian government, are really trying to promote Australian businesses taking responsibility and ensuring they check the work rights of each individual. So if they do request a passport and that passport comes back and it's not an Australian passport, then they can utilise what is called VIVO, which is the department.
Yeah, that's the next question. How do they actually check once they've got that passport?
So once they have the passport, they can utilise VIVO, which is an online system developed for the Department of Immigration and developed for businesses, migration agents, and also visa holders themselves to enter their details in online.
Right. Like an open forum then for.
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, as a business, you have to lodge your details with the Department of Immigration so they know who's using it, what you're checking, who you're checking, things along those lines. For individuals, obviously, they can check their own details.
Yeah.
Migration agents and immigration lawyers, they have a broader spectrum of what they can check in there. But again, privacy laws are paramount, so not just anyone can get all of your information by going in there, but it will give you the conditions, the work conditions that exist as an employer. So for argument's sake, if you have a working holidaymaker visa, as an employer you shortlist that person, you get their passport, you enter it into VIVO, it will actually bring up their work conditions saying 6 months work conditions.
Right.
So it's quite a useful tool.
And is there a subscription for that, or how does that?
Absolutely free. You do need to go online to register.
And when employers are hiring, are there any kind of programs that they can use to facilitate individuals that maybe don't have a visa?
Absolutely. We're in a skill shortage at the moment. Again, we're teetering about 5% unemployment, which means that if we dip below that, then it's going to be very unproductive for Australia. It's very much an industry-specific and geographical-specific a skill shortage, and the Australian government is committed to giving business the tools to be able to bring people in from overseas, but at the same point as well, doesn't want Australian jobs to go away from Australia.
To be completely, lost.
So they've looked at different programs over time. The number one program that's being utilised at the moment is the 457 visa program. It's quick, it's reactive. That's a temporary program, but they also have the employer nomination scheme, which is a permanent program, and also the regional skilled migration scheme. So those three programs are the ones that are normally utilised by employers. Yeah, the 457 visa program is probably the most reactive. So when
it's probably the most, the most common, probably one of the fastest, I'd assume.
Absolutely. Employers, that as soon as they make a decision on an employee, they want that person here now.
Yeah.
So realistically, you can become a standard business sponsor as an employer, and then nominate an unlimited amount of positions to overseas nationals to come in temporarily for up to 4 years at a time.
Yeah.
And processing times are anywhere between 2 and 6 weeks, depending on the complexity of the matter, depending on who it is, what the wage is, what the occupation is, where the person's working, etc. But again, it gives the person a temporary visa to come in and undertake only that work for that employer. Broadening on from there, you've got the employer nomination scheme and the regional skilled migration scheme. They're both permanent visas. So it basically means that when an employer nominates a position through those programs, the person will be given permanent residency here in Australia rather than temporary residency. The employer nomination scheme, it comes with no conditions, so once you've granted your permanent residency, that's it. You're a permanent resident, you can come and go as much as you please, permanent resident.
So there's essentially not that much difference between permanent residency and the ENS application, but it's just the process.
Yeah, it's the process.
To
Absolutely.
get that visa.
The Regional Skilled Migration Scheme and the Employer Nomination Scheme give the same outcome, which is permanent residency. The difference between the two, obviously, is one's for regional employers, and it's a little bit more restrictive. So it does mean that the employer can nominate the role, and the employee has to stay in that role for 2 years after the time that they were granted their visa. And they have to work in a regional area of Australia, undertaking their tasks and duties in a regional area of Australia, which is basically the whole of Australia apart from Brisbane, Gold Coast, Wollongong, Sydney, Newcastle and metropolitan Melbourne. The rest of it, the country, is considered a regional area for migration purposes. So, when you're looking at permanent residency or regional skilled migration scheme, you get the outcome of permanent residency. It's more expensive. You're talking about $7,000–8,000 to get to the point where you're getting permanent residency, and it's normally driven by a candidate's requirement for that, rather than driven by the company to bring that person in as a permanent resident. But then every time you nominate someone, if they're already on 457 visa and you're transferring them across, then you're talking about $1,100 there or thereabouts. And then if you're bringing someone from overseas and they've never had a 457 visa, or they're on a working holiday maker visa here, then you're looking at about 2,100. So probably like 1,200 for a nomination transfer, 2,100 for a nomination and a 457 visa, and then if you've never sponsored anyone before as a business, it's about $4,500.
Where could people get more information about Vivo or any other programs that are similar?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, the department's website, www.imi.gov.au, or by contacting a registered migration agent or immigration law specialist. Again, www.quickvisas.co.uk.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks very much.